when we do shows together, I won't watch him because I know his stupid ass jokes. I know them word for word. I'm not watching him.
Next comic, give it loud everybody for Anthony Eugenio. We're up next comic. Very funny. Wayne Russell, everybody.
Welcome to the Open Mic Pain with Anthony and Wayne podcast.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Open Mic Pain with Anthony and Wayne. Today, Anthony had an opportunity to perform somewhere, so he took that opportunity, and it's just me with our guest. We hit it off right away, so we didn't get a chance to properly introduce him, so I wanted to do that now. You have seen him on Jimmy Kimmel Live. He was the 2024 winner of the Boston Comedy Festival. And from this day forward, you can now know him as a guest on the Open Mic Pain podcast. Give it up for Casey Crawford.
Is it okay if I smoke pot?
Oh, 100%. Anthony's high 99. I'm not even going to say 100% of the time. He's doing volcanoes, and I don't know if you know Anthony owns hydroponic stores, and he knows how to grow weed the way I can't even think of anybody who is proficient in their field as the way he is for growing weed. So
Yeah. No, I'm not that high of level, but
yeah, no, he's
are
too
you
much,
not a
maybe.
weed smoker?
Me? No.
Yeah.
I do enjoy drinking a beer. I do have my beer over here.
Yeah, that's as far as you go. Beers.
What's that?
That's as far as you go. Beers.
Pretty much, yeah. I have smoked weed 2 times. The first time, So as I mentioned, Anthony, he grew his own weed. He had a grow house up in Maine. I think he sold it since, but so he was growing his own weed and he was selling it. Or no, I'm sorry, he was having it refined into vape juice or whatever. And when he had his second child or first child, I forget what it was. I think it was his first child. My wife and I went up to Kittery to meet the kid and everything. And my wife will occasionally dabble in the devil's lettuce. And Anthony gave her a vape pen with some of the weed that he makes, and she talked me into trying it. So I took a little bit of a hit one night upstairs and didn't seem to do much, so I took a much bigger hit. And I was like, yep, this isn't doing anything. So I started to walk downstairs to go play video games and couldn't feel my feet. Yeah. And sat down to play video games and couldn't concentrate, so I shut that off and I went to let the dogs out. Then I came back to sit down. I tried to put on All in the Family because I remembered Anthony said, watch something funny, and All in the Family is funny to me. So I turned that on. Then I got up and went to check on the dogs and came back down. The TV was frozen, but I could hear the audio, and I thought I'm like, dude, I am fucked up. Turns out the TV was just frozen.
Yeah.
So I got up and checked on the dogs again, came to sit down, TV was still frozen, so I got up and checked on the dogs again. Came back, sat down, TV was still frozen. Got up to check on the dogs again. Yeah, you can see where this is going. Eventually, I get to the point where I said to my wife, I was like, hey, is the TV fucked up? And she's like, yeah. I was like, why didn't you fix it? Like, I've been freaking
How
out
long
for
did that? How long did that last?
So I said that to her. I said, hey, how long do I have to do this for? And she goes, do what? I'm like, this high thing. I'm not sure this is for me. How long do I have to do it? She goes, I don't know, 2-3 hours maybe? I said, how long has it been? She went, 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
So I rolled over and I went to sleep. Best sleep I ever had in my life.
Yeah, it is.
But it was not the best experience for me. And I think yeah, I don't know what that was, but I tried it again when we went to go see Shane Gillis in Boston on the way down. And it was a much better experience.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I'll try it again another time. But
I respect people who, well, one, I feel sorry for you, but also I know that there are other things now. Like you can get beer that has 9% alcohol in it, and get way more fucked up than weed will ever fuck you up in any kind of way like that. So like there are other ways to to have your vices. But I have friends just who have very similar stories to yours. When you get a medical marijuana card, the only real things they ask you is why do you want one, and then are you aware that marijuana is now very strong compared to how it used to be. And those are the only two priorities they have. And then they send you the card. So it's like there's quite a difference in how it used to be. I think maybe if you would have gotten some like regular ass Massachusetts weed 20 years ago, like everybody else, you probably would have smoked it for a while,
So,
but you go right to it's like giving someone almost not a psychedelic, but I mean, especially if your blood is so clean and pure, it's gonna fuck you up.
my blood is
and that's what
thick
it's gonna do.
and chunky, like motor oil after 20,000 miles. That's my
Gravy.
blood.
Country gravy.
Well, so that's the other half of the story. Was the next night, me and Anthony used to play video games a lot together. We still do occasionally, but not as much anymore. But so we were playing a video game and talking on the headset, and I told him, I was like, "Hey, I tried your vape pen last night." He goes, "Oh, what'd you think?" And I told him that whole story, and he just laughed at me. And I was like, "What are you laughing at?" And he goes, "Yeah, that was 80%."
80.
And I was like, "What the fuck does that mean?" Because I don't know what that means. If you tell me it's like a 9% ABV, I know what that is. He goes, "That means I'm really fucking good at what I do." And I was like,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. That's one of those you take one hit. Well, I don't know that it would have been so bad if you'd have just stayed with that first hit. And the problem it's not a problem, but it does take 10 minutes, 15 minutes before it's like, whoa, shit. Because it seems so minimal when you're taking it in. It's not like a big puff or like, it's just like, I barely, and like, because it's so concentrated and potent, so you are just ingesting the equivalent of probably like a whole gram's worth of joint in one thing, and you're doing it twice because you didn't think you felt anything. So it's, you went over
Anthony's not a drinker, so I can I can put back some beers and I'm fine. He's a smoker.
What's your beer? Put back some beers. What does that mean?
That depends. Like if it's like a light beer and it's over like a course of a day, I could probably put back like eight to 10 beers throughout the day and
session beers.
yeah, nothing super crazy. There have been nights I've had like 6 IPAs and I felt like garbage in the morning.
6 at what ABV?
8.
Oh man, wow, that's good. That's like 2.5 of those things. Because one of those things is like a can of wine, basically.
Yeah,
you're basically drinking a tall boy of wine.
Yeah,
and 2 of them is 2 bottles of wine.
yeah. It's not good. I'm not proud of that, but. But we've talked about, so since he's not a drinker and I'm not a weed smoker, we've talked about going to an open mic and me smoking weed beforehand and him having a few beers beforehand and then trying to do our sets just for fun, just to see how it goes. But my problem is just getting home. That's my biggest thing. I want to be able to get home safely.
Yeah.
And same thing with him. I mean, he has a Tesla, so he could literally just go boom, go home and pretend like he's driving and he's fine. But, yeah, I drive for a living. I'm an outside sales guy, so I need to drive from point A to point B. I cannot be pulled over for a DUI or whatever.
No, I understand. My license, so. Plus, I think when it comes to marijuana, you'll find ways to do it. But like, if your life is one where you're like, "Hey, here's the 5 reasons why it doesn't work for me," that's totally okay. You might be you might be a 70-year-old man someday who's like, you know what? Now I'm going to start. I'll take a 5 milligram edible and just walk around or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably what you should have done. You should have just taken like a very low dose edible and gone on a hike or something, or listened to some music, or played that video game you like, and then you'd have been like, "Oh, I love this."
Yeah, I might do that someday. I'm very intrigued.
You just dove
by
right
that.
into the pool, sir. You just dove right into the deep end.
I did. I thought All in the Family was it. I thought that was it. I was like, "This is what's going to get me into it." Who would have thought racism would do it?
That apartment is on the Upper West Side in New York, and that it looks exactly like that.
Really?
Yeah, I read somewhere recently that like it's been an apartment that people live in, but it's like a furnished apartment that is like, hey, this is the set from that show. Don't change anything.
That's incredible.
What I've heard. Maybe I'm wrong on some of the details, but I think I got that. It's somewhere in the Upper West Side, and yeah. So that you like? Have you seen every episode?
I have.
Yeah.
I have. Yeah.
And what got you into that? Just being a kid and watching it, or is it a newer thing
Yeah.
for
So
you?
my dad was really into older shows like that, British comedies.
Mm.
So I was really into like Faulty Towers and
Yeah.
Are You Being Served, things like that.
So your
He was a
dad was a
big Three
nerd as
Stooges fan.
well.
Yes, yep. So he
Yeah.
loved all that stuff. So I would watch that with him, and it didn't make a lot of sense to me when I was a kid, But obviously, Archie Bunker is like a cartoonish character. Um, uh, John Cleese is a very cartoonish character in everything he does. So as a kid, I was like, "Oh, this is great."
Yeah. I
But as an adult, I watch it through different eyes, and I see the genius in all of that.
Yeah, what's his name? The guy that wrote all that stuff. What's his name? The main guy that wrote all those TV shows. I can't think of his name. Anyway, but just like I'll watch Seinfeld and watch it from just like a writing standpoint, where you're like, okay, how did they set that storyline up? How many different storylines are there? How do they close all these holes? And like, that's a good one to watch. I'm assuming All in the Family, because there's probably some really great episodes in that. And and then when they've tried to do that, was also a different time in America, obviously. So now you do something like that, it's like just decidedly political. It's like, yeah, Tim Allen, the conservative guy with the lesbian daughter or whatever. Like, yeah, but yeah, and it holds up. What'd you say?
Yes,
Would you say
100%.
All in the Family? All in the Family
Yeah.
holds up.
So my wife, I say this, it's not her type of humor, and when I was watching it, she was kind of disgusted by the off-color things that Archie Bunker would say, and it was very off-color. But as she watched it, I think she saw what everybody saw, was that he's a lovable, ignorant human, where he's very ignorant, and as time goes on and he learns things, you realize he's ignorant, but he isn't really hateful. So it's kind of like a learning thing for everybody, where he's saying all of this shit that's absurd and gross, but even though he's making fun of Herbert Shelmsley, what was his name? George, what the hell was his name on that show?
His son?
No, not his son, not Meathead. Sherman Helmsley, the
Oh yeah, George Jefferson.
Yeah, George Jefferson. He's making fun of George Jefferson, but and his son, but not George Jefferson's son, but he's making fun of them and acts like he hates them, but deep down he really cares for them. He just doesn't want to admit it.
I think another part of the appeal of that show was that everyone knows somebody like that.
Yeah.
You're related to that guy as your dad, or he's your uncle, or whatever, and like he still exists in this world. Is there a place for that kind of comedy on TV now? I don't know, maybe, but you take all those elements, and if it's not well written like it was, because that again, those were some of the best comedy writers of all time, then it doesn't have the same effect. Then you get that other show, that Tim Allen show nobody watches.
Yeah. I think
that.
I think we need to have room for that these days. It's a conversation starter. You know what I mean? It's you don't have to agree with everything that's said, but I think we have to look at it and all agree that it's ridiculous. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. Honestly, anymore I just occasionally look at my passport and thinking about moving to Toronto.
Dude, Canada's great.
I don't know that I have. I'm sure they have similar issues, but I don't know that I had the affinity for this country specifically anymore that maybe I once did. But in terms of like us coming together and believing in like a coming together, I don't know about that.
Yeah, that does seem more unlikely as time goes on.
Yeah, it kind of does. But I'm glad it's not my problem. I'm glad it'll be our children's problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long have you been doing comedy, Wayne?
Me, I've been doing comedy just shy of a year and a half.
A year and a half. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so nuts that nowadays, like, you do comedy and you just like start a podcast right away. Did they mail you the podcasting kit after you went?
No,
to,
so
did it come automatically?
no. So what this was we started comedy. Anthony and I have been talking about it for a very long time. We've been friends for 14 years. I've wanted to do comedy for 20 plus years. You know, and as a teenager, sitting in my room watching Premium Blend and all the Comedy Central specials and watching Dane Cook and all. You know, I've wanted to do it for a long time. Never really knew how to start it. Didn't really have the balls to start it. I met Anthony working at a parts store. We became fast friends, bonding over things like comedy, UFC, video games, things like that. And then 13 years later, it was one of those nights we were going to play video games together, and I texted him and said, "Hey, you're going to come on?" And he goes, "Nope, I'm busy." And he sent me a picture of, he was at Free Street in Portland, sent me a picture of the stage, and I said, "Holy shit, you're doing it." And then 4 days later, we were at Strange Brew in Manchester, and that was my first set.
Fun.
And then the reason we started this was we fell hard into it. We wanted to, this was something we both really wanted to do, and we were researching it on, you know, how to write jokes, how to go about everything, and found out there was nothing there. So this podcast started as almost like a documentary of us starting our stand-up journey. Wherever it goes, we could be forever open mic comics, but we wanted to put this out there like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we did it. So as things go on, there's something for somebody to watch and listen to that says, hey, we were where you are now. This is what we did. It may not work for you, but this is our ignorant teachings.
Yeah.
You know, because if you go back and listen to some of our first episodes, like, this is how we write a joke, and it's not how we write jokes now at all. But at the time, that's how we wrote jokes. This is what we do at open mics. That's not what we do at open mics now, but that's what we did then. So it's almost like a grow with us type of a thing, you know?
Sure. That's neat.
That's how we started it.
I remember my wife and I, we took a couple of cross-country trips, and the first one was like 2008, and we would do video diaries every day before people were like putting stuff on YouTube. And I'm like, people at that time would be like, you guys should make videos, travel videos. And I thought, like, that would be neat and fun to do, but it seems like so much work. And then I watched them, and I think back now, and I'm like, man, if we would have kept doing that, we, you know, as for fun, even on the trips we've taken, it could have garnered some sort of whatever. But then I think, like, of all the dumb shit that came out of my mouth in those videos 15 years ago about the world, the thoughts of a 20-whatever-year-old I was at the time. And I'm like, I don't want that in the world. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even podcasting, like, I think it takes, you say balls, I'll say guts to do that. And it did for me as well, because I was in a very similar situation to you, where you just sit there in the corner, you look. And then part of it is your friend does it, and you say in your head, I can do it too.
Yeah.
If they're doing it, then I can do it too. And like, if they wouldn't have done it, then it wouldn't have spurred you to do it. I had a friend, Paul Pudwell, who he did it, and I'd known him since I was, you know, at that time for 5, 6, 7 years. So it's like I knew him pretty well. He went up and got up and did it, and he was always real funny. But I'm like, I watched it and I looked at it and I said, okay, if he can do it, then maybe I can do it too. And I think that is probably how most people start, and it's a much easier way to start than you just being alone and going to Portland at the open mic, not knowing anybody, and then turning around and going home.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times those people you start with, they don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Because this is a game where you realize, oh, this is hard work, like anything's hard work. But it depends on what your goals are. You know, if you just want to have a fulfilling life, that where you're not just, no offense, playing video games every night, which is what a lot of my friends were doing before they started doing comedy. I was like, hey, let's do something that seems different or whatever, more fulfilling on at least some nights of the week. Then, like, if that's what you want out of it, and you don't have like big eyes for like massive amounts of things, like most people don't even have that thought to just kind of start a podcast, because it's always just like an inclusion thing. Like, get a headshot, start a podcast, get a TikTok. Like, an obligation, I guess, that one would have to include in their climb. But if you're just doing
Yeah.
it for fun and fulfillment and to kind of document your path and journey, that's pretty cool too, man. And yeah, big ups on you
Yeah.
on that.
That was how it started. And I'm not going to lie to you, it is a little bit selfish on our end as well. I've talked about this. You know, I get to talk to people such as yourself. We've talked to people like Ed Driscoll, who was a writer on Dennis Miller show, and Drew Carey, and wrote for Bob Newhart. We talked to Dennis Hurley, who's been an actor in Superstar and Justin
Yeah.
Timberlake music videos, all kinds of. So it is a little bit selfish on our end, but we're also picking brains. You know what I mean? We're trying to
Yeah.
figure out, where'd you start? How'd you get there? What are you doing that maybe we're not doing? What are you doing that other people aren't doing? What are you know? And I think that's a valuable thing for people to hear.
Sure, it is. I learn something every time I listen to a comedy podcast, whether I want to hear
Mm-hmm.
it or not. I do. I think that's the best part about them as a comedian is that the things I've seen specifically are like, oh, this big timer has problems too. He can't get into these rooms. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
then it makes you realize, oh, you're always going to have problems, and it's a game, and people are competing with each other at a certain level. So there's going to be things you don't get. And like to see it at that higher level is awesome to see because you feel better. You know, the last thing I heard that made me warm to that idea was Mark Maron talking about how he thought several times over the years whether or not he'd be able to write for a TV show,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not he'd be able to write for a late night show. And then he ultimately just comes to the conclusion that he doesn't want to give his stuff away, that it's his stuff, and that he doesn't want to have like Stephen Colbert saying it once and then never again. And that would break his heart. And I thought, oh, here's a guy who has it all figured out on paper. And he still has these same ideas that I think I have that are holding me back comedically. Because, that's kind of the general thought. It's just like, hey, go write for a TV show. Well, I don't want to write for a TV show. Is that okay? Yeah, it is okay. Because I just heard one of my idols saying he has the same, like, I think they do wonders in terms of that. And then just this opportunity to get a lot of inside baseball information because comedy is so weird when it comes to getting things and how things can work. It's an art form, so everything is different and it's all subjective. But there are, certain questions that for up until a few years ago, because of formats like this, were not asks. How do you get into here? Who books this place? And like those questions were not out in the open up until this kind of generational thing where people started asking more questions about it. What's funny to me is there's more people doing this now probably than ever before because of COVID and Zoom. And a lot of those people will not be doing it in a couple of years because they'll see how hard it is. But given all those people doing it and the handful of people that are truly successful at it, it's so funny to me. It's not like music where it seems like there can just be thousands of great bands. It seems like with comedy, you got two hands that you can count. They're real serious killers on at any moment in human time, and that's what's weird about it. But we also live in a time where there's no war for us to die in, so we have time to think about what our life means.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's crazy. When we first started, we didn't realize we were coming in a comedy boom in the area. It was maybe a month or two later that I came across this. Jacques Lambert. You were on his Carnival Personnel podcast. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple months into us doing comedy, and before I even really met Jacques, he had an article written where it was him and a bunch of local comics to Lowell talking about the boom, and we didn't realize that was going on at the time. So it's kind of interesting to come in at that point and kind of see how it's changed over the last year and a half.
Yeah, Boston and this area has always been a comedy town. So the one thing you can kind of count on is if you're not going to do it, somebody else is going to do it. And that's the confluence of like the people who are from here, like yourself, and then the colleges coming together, so that will never go away in terms of this area. There are some places where, there's mics a lot of places now, but like in terms of comedy being a fertile ground, this is very much so. And you can kind of tell your dad with a straight face you're a comedian here, and he'll believe you because that's a thing here. And it's not where I'm from. It's not where I'm from. You can't do that where I'm from. Your dad will laugh you off the farm, So there's definitely good parts about it. But, so open mic pain. So what questions do you have for me? I will answer them.
So the first thing I want to say, so we had Steve Bjork on a couple of weeks ago, and
that was great hair.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir here. I wish he would donate to me.
That's amazing.
So when he was on, I had mentioned that both Anthony and I both have a wall of posters of shows we've been on for different things, and I have in my head these events that I'm going to print the posters and put them on my wall. As I mentioned, this is something I've wanted to do for a long time, so I'm gonna be very self-indulgent with it. The first one was my first paid gig. One was my first hosting gig, which was the one with Steve. But my first opening gig was with you. So I brought this down.
Oh, yeah?
You're on my wall. This was
cool.
from Stark Brewing.
That wasn't that long
I
ago.
opened. It wasn't that long ago. It was
you
May
framed
11th.
it, too?
I framed it. It's on my wall.
Yeah.
I was the opener.
Dude.
Anthony was the host. We had Pat Lacey. I think Trevor Nutt was there. And you. And I gotta say, I couldn't ask for a better first opening spot. It was incredible. You were great. The crowd was great. Everything about it was just magical.
You think that it's always like that, don't you? You go to another one.
You would think, yeah. It's not.
No.
I've had many more since then, but it's not. But that night, I'll be a dementia patient at some point in my life. I'm sure, probably from the beers that I'm drinking. But that'll be a night that I won't forget because that was so much fun.
Yeah,
so that's one thing I did want to mention to you.
I think that I have a box and it's in this closet here, and it's of all the things I've done. And like I try to be a pretty humble person when it comes to comedy. So if I get something, an award or whatever, or a piece of memorabilia, I put it in this box. And I only go into that box when we're moving or whatever. So I don't know that there'll ever be a time when I have like a wall of stuff up there. I never thought I'd have that much whatever. I did pay Will Podorf to paint a picture of me, so I guess I do have a little bit of comedy ego when it comes to things like that. But like of my things, I do have some awesome pieces of memorabilia. Actually, can I go get it? It'll take me like 5 seconds.
Absolutely. I would love to see it.
I'll be right back. I'll show you. Or at least the things I'm keeping that. Yeah. 1 second. Yeah, so my wife hung this up. I wouldn't have, but I kept it because it's awesome. It's the set list from when I did Just for Laughs.
That's awesome.
It's Andy Kindler's showcase the last night of the festival. I got on it because I had good sets there, and they're like, "Oh, here's the lineup. It's Andy Kindler, Mark Normand, Todd Barry, you, the Sklar brothers, Mike Lawrence, Dave Ross." Yeah, and
that's incredible.
It was at this club called the Catacombs in Montreal, which is now closed, but it was like a heavy metal club that had like skulls as the walls.
Oh, yeah.
And my wife was there, and I got off stage. I remember I cried. But I remember swiping this. It was in the green room. I remember just swiping it and thinking, like, this is never going to happen again, so keep that.
That's so crazy.
I talked to a friend who got on the showcase a couple of years before me, and she was listing the comedian she did it with, and it was like Louis C.K., Chris Rock. It was just like, yeah. But these people...
You got some killers on there, though.
Oh, yeah, this one was... And you know what's funny? When it comes to these things, like, right, you get up on this stage with these killers. Todd Barry is working on his new 8 that he wrote a week ago. You're working on the 8 you've been working on since you were 12.
Yeah.
So it's kind of set up in a way for you to do well. If that makes
Yeah.
any kind of sense, where he's just like looking over at you and he's just like, "What's this kid doing?" you know. So it's funny in that sense because it's like hitting off a tee kind of in those situations sometimes. Just because those people, that's just another gig to them. You know, for
Yeah.
you it's the gig of your life, but they're just like, "What am I doing on Tuesday?" you
Isn't that
know.
funny how that works? So, like we're obviously in different times. That May 11th for me was my thing. I had friends there. My wife was there. My cousin was there. I had customers that knew that I did this. They're like, I'm gonna come see it. That was like the big thing. That was like, holy shit, he got his first opening gig.
Yeah.
Now I've done a bunch of them, so they're all like, yeah, whatever. But you have these milestones as time goes on. Um,
You yeah,
it's
you do,
yeah,
and you want
it's
them. You
incredible.
want, and when all the stars line up, then it's great. But then that's when you have to really just turn around and look and think about that stuff because like, after a while, you don't get to celebrate. It's work. It's work. And then the
Hmm.
celebration you get is when you're in the car later driving home, listening to your set, or you come home and
Yep.
tell your wife how it went, and then you're laying in bed or whatever. But like when it all just lines up like that, where it's like your friends are there, your loved ones are there, you have a good set, it's a fun night, it's a packed house, like those are rare times. Um, I think even when you're doing it a lot,
Yeah.
so like yeah, that's smart to look around and say, all right, hey, I'm glad I did this. High
Yeah.
fives, yeah. Because in this business, that is how you get paid. You get paid emotionally at first.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get paid emotionally. Sometimes it's negative pay, but
Yeah.
yeah,
It is. It
yeah,
is very self indulgent.
yeah,
Like people
yeah.
people ask me. I'll have people ask me like, "Oh, you get paid for that?" And it's like, yeah, I might get $20, $25, whatever, $50, maybe, I don't know, whatever, maybe cover a little bit of gas. But the the part that I care about is it's the creativity part. It's all the stuff leading up to that point where you have those nights where shit really just pays off, where you have those sets where it's just boom, boom, boom. Uh, you know that you've been telling this joke for a year. I mean, for you, probably much, maybe much longer at this point. But for me, like I've been telling the same jokes for a year, trying to tweak them and change them and
Hmm.
make them so they're just right. And then for that night where everything hits the way I want it to, that's the pay. It's not the
Yeah.
it's not the beer money. It's not the gas money.
No.
I'm not paying my mortgage with it. It's like you said, you get off stage and you want to cry. That
Yeah.
happens. You get off stage, you're like, man, that was so fucking good.
Yeah.
It was probably
Especially
horrible when you look back on it. But,
you might in 2 years and be like that wasn't that good, but that's
yeah.
that's how you know you're getting better. Also, by the way,
Yep.
but yeah, the idea that it's also just so self-created from its inception of what you're writing, from the idea turning into a joke, to you having the confidence to say it on stage, to saying it enough times to refine it and tweak it, to getting to where the baby comes out and just like that perfect moment. It does seem like because it's all stemmed by your just initial idea, your initial stupid idea. And that's also what's cool about it too. I
We,
That's my favorite part is just the writing, sitting in this chair right here and just writing. The performing is a part that, like, if I haven't done it in a while, I'm excited to do it. But if it's the second or third night in a row, um, a lot of times I want to take some of those nights back. But more than anything, like the writing is what gets me. The creation of the idea. Yeah.
so you have a very particular style. You have like a full blown character. That kind of, I'll say that kind of threw me off though. So the first time you and I worked together was at first time I met you was at Stark Brewing in January. Anthony had opened up for you there. We talked a little bit, but I wasn't on the show. I just kind of Anthony introduced me. Whatever. I went home. Then a few months later, I was at Thirsty Robot, and so I really only knew you as this character that you have on stage. And I went up. I think I did 5 minutes. I don't know if you remember that Thirsty Robot. It was probably like it had to have been 100 people there.
Oh yeah,
But it was a
yeah. I
free
remember.
show. It was really chatty. We talked
Yep.
about not doing the bowling alley style, but like cutting it in half and like,
Yeah.
that was another really fun point that you want to talk about, uh, moments in your comedy career that meant something. And like Anthony would make fun of me because I gush a lot, but that was something for me. Was I got off stage that night. I wasn't supposed to go up, but Delusional offered me to do 5 minutes. I got off stage and you walked from across wherever you were and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, that was really good," and then you just disappeared. And I was like, "That was so fucking cool," like having somebody such as yourself give you a compliment like that. Um,
Oh, well, I hand out compliments very loosely on shows. Just
I
know
appreciate
that. But that's not speaking of anything for your set. But I do that because I'm sitting here trying to muster up the strength just to get up sometimes and do new jokes at an open mic. And it takes a lot as you get older.
mhm.
It takes a lot. And you don't get encouragement from your loved ones and your friends outside of this a lot of time. So
Yep.
for somebody else to tell you that, hey, you got up there and you did it, at the very least, like, as much as people are like, hey, it doesn't mean anything when you tell someone good set just because you saw them, I think it kind of does, because we should all kind of encourage each other in this situation. Now, this is
Yeah.
regardless of how your set went that night. This is more
Yeah.
just like how I approach the community behind it,
Hmm.
because you get paid in laughs. And if I have a night where Eugene Merman tells me good set, I'm going to do comedy for at least another 6 months.
Yeah.
Like I know that. I know that. So like for us to even get up there and to try this stuff when other people are too scared to, that's enough for a good set for me. Does that make
Yeah.
any sense? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
met
100% agree with you.
I've been telling people this story since it happened, but I met Doug Stanhope a couple months ago.
Oh,
And
no
I was
kidding.
I was in Tucson, Arizona, and he lives just outside of there. And I went to a open mic on a Monday that had a writing workshop beforehand. And I get there, I take the bus there because I was visiting a friend, and I get there, and the first person I see is Doug Stanhope. And he's sitting there, and he reaches his hand out, and he's like, "Hey, I'm Doug," and introduces himself like he is just some other guy. And then I was like, "Hey, no shit," or whatever. And then this other comic comes in who's a kid. Doug. "Hey, I'm Doug." And he's like, "Hey, I'm Alvaro," or whatever that kid's name was. And then this other kid comes in. "Hey, I'm Doug." "Hey, I'm Jose." These kids had... we do a writing workshop where it's me, Doug Stanhope, and these two other comedians who had no idea who he was.
That's incredible.
And the whole time, he acted like we were peers. He didn't say, "I'm Doug Stanhope." He said, "I'm Doug." He treated me like a comic, like we were just two grunts in the army, just trading joke ideas. And I'm like, what an impact that... It's only been a short amount of time, but I'm like, I took that, and I'm like, I'm always going to do that then. Because this guy's he's a living legend, and he's acting like we're both just open micers. And
Yeah.
if he's doing that, then I have no right to shit on anybody else in any sort of form or whatever way. Like, much respect to that way of doing it, and because it can be done that way. It can be done that way. It was awesome to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm going to say, and I'm not obviously not at the level of a Doug Stanhope or yourself, but if I see somebody who, if I'm at an open mic and they're newer, I can tell they're new. They're just sitting there, and I'm not much of I'm a sales guy during the day. Like, that's my job. I'm a sales guy. I talk to people for a job. So to go to an open mic and do that, it's like, I don't want to do this. But if I see somebody, I'm like, yeah, you're new. I will go and I'll talk to them. Like I've made some friends that are like, I've seen them post on Facebook, like, "Hey, this is going to be my first open mic," and I happen to be there and I see them and I go talk to them and, like, you know what, go do it, man, good job. And then I'll stay there and watch them, and so I agree with you. Everybody needs to do that, but I don't think a lot of people do. But I think it's very commendable.
I think at this level, we're each other's encouragers. Really, no one else cares that much. Yeah, so. But friendship and comedy, to me, has never revolved around how good somebody was, for me. It was how personable they were, and a nice person. I dealt with assholes really early in this game, and I'm like, all right, well, if you're nice to me, I'm going to be nice to you. I don't care how funny you are. I don't care if you quit next week. I will talk to you for an hour outside. I will have admiration and respect for people who I think are funny. There are people that I can call their names out that we don't even need to be friends, and I like them. You
Mm-hmm.
know, but in terms of my comedy friendships, many of them are with people who hardly do it anymore. So the in this game, like working and like the socialization are two different things. You know, you'll find people you want to work with, and then there are people you actually want to talk to and deal with on a regular
Yeah.
basis and share your life with, and those are two different people, and they're not always the funniest people. It's just how it
Yeah.
is. You know, that's fine. I don't want. I wouldn't want to be around just a killer all the time.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
I just think people who want to put the work in and are nice people. Nice people obviously trumps everything, but people who want to put the work in and try, those are the fun people to be around. People that are bouncing things off you and you know, you're just kind of having a good time helping each other out, punch up their bits, or maybe not even. Maybe it strays away from that, and you know, like you said, they're just generally nice people that you can have a one-on-one personable conversation with.
Yeah, and when it comes to comedy, you're realizing now that you now know hundreds of people you did not know 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So this is your social life. This is your it's sort of kind of work. It's your art. If you're doing an art, it's your art form. So it's many different
Mhm.
things. Many people doing it are younger and they're forming relationships and living out in the world and like bumping into each other in all kinds of ways. And like I'm past that portion of it. I went through it.
Mhm.
You know, so I think that it's important to know as a person who's newer as yourself, all those things are happening right now. All
Yep.
those things, not just comedy. It's just like you're making friends. You'll find if you keep doing this at whatever level you keep doing it, if someday you're like, oh shit, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write a pilot, all in the family. I'm going to write the pilot. Fuck it, I'm doing it. Well, who do you want to work with? You want to work with somebody you can punch, and then they'll come back to you after their lunch break, and you can hug and fight and disagree with and agree with. Oh, that's your friends. But it's also the people that you're working with now. It's also the
Yeah.
kid who's like, I'll film your set, or I know how to edit, or I know how to do this. Those are the people you're going to find and look towards when you're finally making different kinds of art that's going to require a collaborative effort. It won't be a person you just met because you don't necessarily trust them as much. And that's also a big part of what's happening now is like you're subconsciously just this is your rookie class and you look over at each other and you all you know you're going to go at different levels and different things are going to happen for different people and not everybody's going to stay with it, but
Mhm.
you will find yourself texting somebody 5 years from now being like, hey, do you want to do this thing with me, you know, and it's better to work with those people than people you don't know. So
Yeah, definitely. I've met so many great people doing this already in just the 17, 18 months or whatever. Just people that, like you said, I didn't know a year and a half ago that I'm happy to call friends. So uh, that part of it is incredible.
yeah, I think I started 2012, so when I was about a year and a half in, that would have been like, oh, right around that time I got a feature gig. I was featuring for Kyle Kinane, and I just ate shit for 20 minutes. I didn't have, yeah. That's the other thing, like your time, when you're like, I have 10 minutes. You ain't
Hmm.
got 10 minutes. You got 5
Right.
minutes.
Right.
And in a year, you'll be like, okay, now I have 10 minutes. Remember, like, you get comedy smarter as the years go by. I remember when I lived in Austin in 2015, calling my dad, being like, hey, I think I have enough time to be able to do this much time, and I should almost be there. That was about 9 years ago, you know?
So it's funny you mentioned that. So I'm going to kind of circle back to the point I was making. So when I had first seen you live, yeah, I had seen you on Kimmel and stuff. When I had first seen you live, you have that persona that you do on stage, that character that you do on stage. Uh, and on top of that, you have something that not a lot of people do. Um, is the shorter jokes, like I don't want to call them one liners. Some of them are one liners, but you know, 1, 2, 3 liners that are really short, economy of words type There's no fat on your jokes.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you to put that character together, along with the I'm gonna do these jokes that are just jokey jokes? Like you don't. Maybe you do have some that are a little longer, maybe more conversational. But every time I've seen you, it's just been boom, 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 like friggin' Punch Out, Mike Tyson's Punch Out, just A B A B A B A B.
That was a concerted thing that didn't start right away. I mean, like your first like 3 to 5 years is going to be identity formation.
Yep.
So maybe it was always just like the get up was always just a security blanket, an ability for me to say whatever I wanted. Because I remember seeing like one, you kind of need a point of reference to understand it. Otherwise, you just think it's ridiculous. I get that, but I don't care about those people. Like I remember
Yeah.
seeing Neil Hamburger. Have you ever seen Neil?
No, I don't even know that name.
Oh, Neil Hamburger is not a real person. He's a character, and he gets up on stage and he does like this really perverted Lawrence Welk, just outrageous, gross out comedy. And every time I've seen him, people walk out, and then everyone else loves it. And then he'll do merch after the show as himself, the person he actually is, a different person altogether. And like just seeing that and understanding that that the ruse built into it is like a safety net.
Yep.
It's a safety net. It's like I think about like okay, well, I'll punch down on myself, and that's what this whole thing will be. And I think that was probably the formation of it initially was like, well, you talk about guts to go up there and do it and say something about the world. I never thought I was saying something about the world. I thought I was saying something about the world no one else was saying.
Mm-hmm.
So it was okay to say, or that no one would care about. So I guess that's what gave me the courage to do it, but also like the get up just being kind of a binky. I've gotten up since. Like I'll get up in shorts and a t-shirt, but I feel most comfortable dressed that way on stage if it's not too hot. And the word economy was something that wasn't there right away. But I mean, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years in is when it really started formulating. But that was always just based on of who my heroes were. Hedberg, Emo Phillips. Stephen Wright, people who were writers. They were great writers, and in a different time, they probably would have been, written poetry or something like that, and not done stand up. But like, to hear someone talk about their opinion on the world to me, I'm like, what qualifies? I mean, I don't know. I know we all have a voice and blah 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 blah, but I'm like, I don't need to hear what you think about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Unless you're a person who has some sort of education about it. You can have an opinion and an idea, but like, this is an open mic. Like, tell me some jokes, and that part about it never attracted me. Here's what I think about the world. I'm like, what? No, you have no qualifications other than you just standing up here.
Yep.
Force people to listen to your stupid shit. I mean, do what you want, I guess, but like, that was never my approach. My approach was, hey, would you guys like to laugh at some jokes? Here's jokes like the jokes I used to hear.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of get to know me, and there's still a lot of get to know me in comedy that I'm like, I don't need to get to know you. Make me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
The personality comedy is a lot of it now. It's a lot of personality. Do I like this person?
Yep.
And I'm okay. I can't control the world, so I just shit out these little jokes. And yes, it's always been concerted. And interestingly, it doesn't work on a lot of social media when you do it that way, or when I do it that way. Some people are great at it, but it kind of has to have a universalism to work on the internet for people. Its strength is more in its individuality. I'll say that, where it's like, oh, I'm looking at a subject with a God's eye and saying, what is the slice of pie about cats that hasn't been taken yet? I'll take this slice.
It's funny you mentioned that. Two of your jokes that I think about all the time. That's kind of weird to say. I have two jokes of yours that I think about all the time. Every once in a while, I'll be driving for work and I'll just think about it. One is your joke about cats at a laser show. That's so goddamn funny. I'll just think about it, just start laughing. The other one is the scissors kicks.
Thank you. Those were
That is one of my
both
favorite jokes that I've ever heard. That is
both word
incredible.
economy jokes. Yeah,
Yeah.
Cat's Laser Light Show was probably the first terse one-liner I had ever written.
Oh yeah,
That was probably the very
that's
first
so good.
Yes. Yeah, where it was just like I saw the explosive nature and the possibility in that joke in 4 seconds, what people weren't doing in 2 minutes. It's like having a stick of dynamite with a real short, instead of waiting 2 minutes for jokes or a punchline or whatever. I was like, I'm just going to get right to it. And like, that was another example of world building.
Mm-hmm.
You can world build in 5 words or whatever, 10 words or whatever. You can build a whole world. You don't have to spend 2 minutes world building. You can spend 5 seconds world building and create something extremely powerful. You know, and then also something that is, if we're looking at like the mechanics of it, it's like, for me, it's always, I've said this before, but it's absurdist, which is just the idea that something exists within the realm between impossible and possible. That can happen. You can't have cats in a laser light show. It's not outside the realm of possibility. And that's what makes it funny. But it exists on the fringes of possibility. And that's what makes it funny. And like I understood and recognized that right away. And then I also understood that it was the combination of two things coming together, the laser lights and the cats, and like thinking that's how it should be. Anytime I tried to make I'd lay in bed and just try and think on one thing at a time. I want to write a joke about camping. It would never come, but it was always just like the intersection of two things coming together and it being ridiculous that made me think that's an idea.
Yeah.
So it was never just, I want to write a joke about cats. It was like, oh, this could happen. There could be cats in the laser light show. You know,
There's that coupled with your character,
right?
Which
Again,
is like the icing on the cake. It's a cherry on top of the icing on top of the cake, where anybody can go up there and say that line, and it would be like, all right, that's pretty funny. But to have the whole experience of Casey Crawford, the beanie, the jacket, everything. Yeah. To say that joke in that character makes it 100 times funnier than if you were to just go up there and be like, hey, you know, whatever. So that's incredible. Yeah, I've been working a lot myself with a lot of my own jokes with word economy. That's something that Anthony's been very big on since the beginning, and you know, I've been working on. But I found myself with some jokes that I've thought up over the last few weeks where I'm like, yeah, these don't need to be more than 2 sentences. You know, I initially write them as, okay, I can get 30 seconds out of this, but I'm like, why do I have to? I don't have to. Just I can get the same exact laugh out of 10 seconds as I do 30.
Yeah, it always depends on what your goals are, because I think like you get going and you think like, I gotta get booked, I need more time, and like I've always gone at a turtle's pace. I have. I'm very, very slow with how I write. And that's the other part about it, is those things marinate for a while. I sit on that fucker for a couple of months in my phone and I stare at it. And I'm like, it probably had maybe 3 or 4 incantations of words before that where I'm just moving words around. You know, it's like, how's this going to go? The other thing is rhythm. Like, that was a concerted effort as well, where it's like poetry or E.E. Cummings, where you hear the rhythm of it. And then once that locks in, it helps you then learn to write and think about that template put on other ideas you have. Yep. And then that's how your individuality, for me, is built one joke at a time. And it probably starts with that one. Yeah. Or, But, comedy's an art form, man. So it's like I've said before, like, you can take all 4 levels of English and not be a great writer. You can be a good writer, but greatness comes from something else. And I think if anybody was going to say what I'm doing is different, it's because of those things, but largely it's because of that whole idea that you're taking a piece of the world that has not yet been taken up to that point. Up to that point. Now it seems universal. Like I said, I saw a shirt in a mall that had cats at a laser light show on it once.
Really?
A couple of years after I wrote that joke, but I'm like, it comes into the conscious whatever at some point. It does, especially if it's a universally loved thing. It's not yours after a while or whatever. So like, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to come up with that kind of idea, obviously. But to do it in that way, is a little different. But like, that's the whole goal, I think. And if you're going to keep doing this and think that you have the goods to keep doing it, I think that is what it takes. All the technical things that you can learn, like anybody else can learn, and those things are technical. Word economy is technical. Rhythm is technical. You can learn those things, but just to have that like perspective on certain things that no one else has, that is what separates a person, I think.
Yeah.
And that is what I would focus on. If I could go back to, my wife just turned 46, and I asked her, I'm like, hey, if you go back 20 years, what would you say to yourself? And she asked me that, and I said that I would have more confidence, that even though my way of thinking was not traditional, it was still warranted. In comedy or otherwise, because that is valuable in the world. It is valuable in the world to think a little differently than everyone else. And I think if you take that perspective into your comedy, it will help,
Yeah,
Like,
that makes a
yeah,
lot of
like
sense.
so many people spend so much time trying to relate to other people, like, and doing that kind of like relatability comedy, airplane comedy, things like that, and they can get laughs that way, but like trying to walk that fine line between unrelation and then understanding is much more funny to me, you know.
Yeah.
Because that thing everyone can relate to, the downside of it is that everyone can also think of that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else has that idea, and so does it make it that funny anymore? you know? But the other thing with one-liners, they remain powerful. You know, they do. I mean, yeah, you might want to take a break from them, but shit, man, 2 years off on one of them, and then you hear it again in the car, and you're like, like, they have a potency about them, you know?
The thing I love about one-liners is they're fairly easy to recite. Obviously, not in the same context or the
Yeah.
same way, but I could go to work and say, "Hey, I saw Casey Crawford over the weekend, and he had this joke about cats and laser light shows," and say the couple lines to convey the joke. And obviously not quite as good as seeing it live, but you get the point across, and you can kind of share it. I think it helps spread the word of what you're doing.
Thank you.
But
I can tell you this: even the people who claim to like really love my stuff, they never get the words right. And I'm wondering,
oh
like,
yeah,
do I spend too much time on this? Because even the people who are like, I love you, man, I love that joke that they're just gonna botch when they, and I'm like, no one has ever nailed it. And it makes me realize, one, no one thinks about you as much as you.
yeah.
No one does. They're just passing you, and they're just passing ships. They might think about you briefly, but no one's worried about your shit as much as you are. You know.
That's funny in kind of in the same vein, but Anthony and I have had the conversation when we go on stage, and hey, your set went good, and the other one will go, oh yeah, I fucked up that line, and it's like nobody realized, nobody knew, even
No.
if they knew the joke, they don't know that you fucked up that line.
Yeah.
It's you can usually flub around it pretty easily, as long as you don't make it obvious.
Yeah, I so much focus was on perfect recitation early on for me, and I do agree. The times when I don't do as well, I'll be in the car and I'll be like, well, okay, how did I fuck tonight up? And I'm like, you were tired, or whatever, or you didn't memorize your set. Like on those levels, like I do have better sets when I'm on the ball. But like if I do flub a line, I come at it a little differently, because that's the disadvantage of word economy. Because if you do flub a line in word economy, you're fucked. You don't get you can't reconvey the idea. It's just oh shit, you said they instead of them or whatever you said wrong, and Like it's just gone and dead. You just got to move on. And the nice part about doing short jokes with longer sets over time, what I've realized is that when you're doing 45 minutes, it just gets counted as exposition. It's like that line you didn't get on Mystery Science Theater.
Mm-hmm.
It's what it turns out to be. Whereas if you're doing a 7-minute set at the Comedy Studio and you get silence on one, it's very jarring. It can be, where it's like, well, fuck, my whole set's fucked now. But I mean, if you're doing a longer set, it just gets passed off as something they just generally didn't understand, probably. And that's what's nice about it. Because with one-liners, a lot of it isn't I didn't think it was funny. It's I don't understand what you're even getting at, because you're walking that fine line of word economy, where it's like you're only giving them so much information, and if they're not listening, you're fucked. If they're not listening from the very first word, you're fucked.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah. So it's got its weaknesses.
One of my questions to you was going to be who were some of your influences, and I actually wrote down 3. 2 of them you mentioned, which was Mitch and Emo. Rodney was the other one. I just assumed Rodney was probably one, but
For sure.
So I was very happy to hear you say Emo, because I love Emo Phillips.
Oh, me too, man. So have you seen him open for Weird Al?
Oh my god, dude. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I am a gigantic Weird Al fan. I've seen him
this all
8,
tracks,
9, 10
by
times.
the way.
Huh?
This all tracks, by the way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I saw him down in Indian Ranch. Is it Indian Ridge? Indian Ranch, wherever that is, down in Webster.
Oh, cool. He was there?
He was. It was incredible. My wife got me tickets.
I performed there.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be so cool.
Harry Conforti. Yeah.
Oh my god!
Wow, you saw him there? When?
I saw him there. I've seen him.
When did you see him there?
Ballroom. It
when
was.
Did you see him in Webster?
It was probably 2 years ago.
Maybe 3. I was there. Wow. Yeah. I think Harry can. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that might be a Harry room. Yeah, that place is so cool.
Dude, it's incredible.
Yeah, and they love comedy too. Yeah.
Just I've seen Weird Al so many times. It's like it's always awesome, but for that night, being able to see Emo Phillips perform was, despite Weird Al being my favorite performer in anything, you go from actor, musician, comedian, anything, he's my favorite. But seeing Emo Phillips there that night was incredible. Yeah. I've talked about it a few times on the podcast, but me and another kid in my office, very big Emo Phillips fans, and occasionally one of us will just start reciting Emo one-liners.
He's not a comedian?
And the other one will finish them. What's that?
He's not a comedian?
He's not.
Oh, funny. Awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has you can find his live at the Hasty Pudding Theater album on YouTube. It was recorded in Cambridge.
Oh, was it? I didn't realize it was there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of it's kind of like a adjacent album to his record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love the again, he might not be regarded as a one-liner guy, but like that template of the narrative structure of I'm from here, still that's my whole thing. Like that was the thing where I was like, I'm not going to do non sequiturs just about random things. I'm going to do a narrative structure, and that's going to take a lot longer to do. But I kind of want to do it because I kind of want that full document. I'm going to make a record. I'm going to make a record at the Rockwell Theater, and I kind of want it to be. I want it to be that. That's always been the goal. I heard that emo album, and he was like, "I'm from Downers Grove, Illinois," and he just gets into it, and he talks about his girlfriend, and like he starts out like introducing you to this world that he's kind of built for himself, and uses a narrative structure, and hardly does any non sequiturs, and like that whole idea has always been the basis for my act since I started. And I was like, God damn, that's going to take a long time. And it has taken a long time. It's taken me 13 years. But like that was definitely the bedrock for me. Yeah. The first thing I ever bought comedically, like of any sort of like just my dad pushing stuff on me, was Mr. Show, which I loved, which was a sketch show that David Cross and Bob Odenkirk did on HBO. That hit me real hard and watch that religiously. And then, obviously, like those other adjacent things like seasons, 3 through 9 of The Simpsons and Dana Gould, and like those things hit me for a long time. And I remember going to the record store and getting Eugene Merman's first CD. They gave me the promo copy they had there, and just thinking like, oh, someday I want to go to Boston where this was recorded, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, really big fan for a while. I miss those days of just being someone who likes comedy. And then, why doesn't your friend try comedy? What do you think
Um,
it is about him and you that is different? He doesn't need it.
I think it's the drive. I don't think he has any drive or interest to go up on stage and do it. That's the thing. So I have I have a lot of people. My work. We're all very close. We're a 25 person company, and we are all extremely close. And they all know I do this. And occasionally, I'll have people like throwing things at me, and I'll say to them like, "Why don't you write something and come try?" And it's always, "No, no, I would never. I could never. I could never." Uh, I think it's a drive. I think it's a fear and a drive
Yeah,
to do it,
my friend
or lack
TJ,
of
he
rather.
he used TJ used to help me write stuff, and I still respect his opinion when he sends me stuff. But again, he just doesn't have that whatever I had to be like, fuck it, I'll get up there and do it. And I think what made me get up there and do it was the beanie and the jacket, where it's just like it's not me. I'm just yeah. And
Yeah.
also, I'm shitting on myself. You can't blame me. I'm just shitting on myself, like Rodney shit on himself, like
Hmm.
all those like safeguards you put into place to make yourself get up there and do it is yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the beanie. I used to wear a baseball hat every time we went on stage,
Yeah.
um, and I think it was because of this catastrophe up here.
Yeah,
But
it's
I would
just
always
weird
wear a
how all these
baseball.
self consciousness just comes into play, where it's just like no one
Yeah,
cares. They don't want to fuck you.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
for months, I would just wear a baseball hat. And one day, Anthony, well, not one day, it was over months. He would make fun of me. He's like, "Yeah, you have your baseball hat on down to here. You have the microphone up to here. And nobody can see anything except your fucking
Hmm.
little pupils." He's like, "Get rid of that shit." And I said, "You know what? I'll get rid of my baseball hat when you stop wearing flannel," because he would always wear flannel.
Uh-huh.
And I walked into the next open mic we went to. He wasn't wearing flannel. I was like, "All right, here we go." I haven't worn a baseball hat since. He hasn't worn flannel since.
Yeah, it's fun. You have to do those things early on. You have to try all the food because, yeah, if you don't do that, someday you're a guy walking in the hot sun wearing a beanie, and someone's like, "Why are you wearing a beanie?" Or people make, yeah, they will call you out, and I
Yeah.
don't care about it. But like, this is now the time you do that because you get stuck in your ways over time. You're like, I
Hmm.
don't go to those rooms, or I'm not doing that. And like now is when you cannot be afraid to try different things, and you cannot be afraid to fail. It should just be a lot of failure. I waited too long to fail. I think that was part
Fit.
of my problem. Yeah, I wanted to do well all the time too much, and I didn't
Hmm.
embrace the failure that you need to embrace in order to get better.
I see that a lot, and I think about that a lot when I go to open mics because I will see a lot of the same people doing the same bits over and over again the same exact way. And I'm like, how? In my head, I'm like, why are you doing that? Don't you want to one, try new things, or two, try the same things in a different way to make them better? Like, yeah, you do want to go, and of course, the laughs are what brings you to want to go up to the mic. But there's nothing I love more than walking up on stage with 7 or 8 new ideas and try them out in a small form and just see, all right, that one got a little bit of a chuckle. I'm going to work on that. That one got a little bit of a chuckle. That one didn't. So I'll put that away. I'll look at it another time. This one got a huge laugh. I'm going to put that to the front and really, really work on that. You know what I mean?
I think it's
And
a part of it's ego, and then the other part of it is one we all kind of have to accept now, especially in this day and age where we're not all going to make it, that we're doing it for different reasons. So if someone wants to get if if some old person wants to get up there and do the same 5 minutes they've been doing for 20 years, I'm going to let them because this is an open mic. What I have to do is ask myself, why do I care about that? And say, okay, well, what do I want out of this? I know I don't want to be that person that gets up and does the same 5 minutes. Like, at the very least, I think that's what you should take from those things. But in terms of like that judgment, it's, again, if only a handful of people are going to make it, and it probably won't be anybody we know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately that kind of thing doesn't matter so much as, is that person having a good time, because this is really just karaoke at that level, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
then, like, I remember some people think it's a race, and they're like, I gotta, this gives me 5 new minutes, and then they have an
Mm-hmm.
album out in 2 years, and then they whatever. But like, I think about the things I want, and I'm like, well, what are we all shooting for right now? We're all kind of shooting to feature for a headliner, you know.
Yep.
I'm like, all right, well, if that's the goal, that's only 20 minutes. I better make sure it's 20 fucking killer minutes,
Yeah.
not 20 half baked whatevers. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that was always my thinking when it came to from that. So I do go very slow, and people do think that that's the other problem with doing it the narrative way, is you have to put things in that kind of format even at mics, or at least I feel like I need to some of the time. So it's like you paint yourself into a corner, and you end up find yourself, at least giving off the perception that you're not putting out a lot of material. And I'm not putting out a lot of material, but like at the same time, it's a brick by brick process where it might take me a month to get a new minute, but it's going to be a better minute than yours. Like, that's kind of like the competitive thinking that it goes into a comic's mind when it comes to things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
You had mentioned, and I heard you talk about this before, but you had mentioned that you're working on uh, doing an album.
yeah, I'm
Are
doing
you?
it. I'm gonna record it at the Rockwell Theater on September 20th.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
Rob
coming right up.
Green's gonna host. Janet's gonna feature. My buddy Tim's gonna film it, and I'm going to. I don't think I'll sit on it. I'm gonna press. I'm just gonna press it on vinyl at my leisure, and
Yeah.
sell it on the road for the rest of my life.
Well, I heard you talk about this a while back, and I was waiting. We've had this plan for a while. I was waiting this. If you could please keep one for me, I would like to buy one of those.
Oh, oh, for sure, man, totally. I'm probably gonna have about 100 of them in the back of my van for the rest of my
Yeah.
life. So,
Yeah. I know you said you were going on tour a little later, going around or whatever. Um, so yeah, we'll figure that out. But I would definitely love to have one because I do have um, I have a few Weird Al vinyls.
yeah,
Jacques gave me a Steve Martin vinyl, and I'd love to have a Casey Crawford vinyl to go up with those. So
no
that'd be awesome.
problem. Yeah. Do you have a record player?
I do. I
Oh,
do.
cool. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that whole idea of like the when Hedberg put out his albums of just sitting there and like listening to the whole thing, and I'm like, I hope that if whoever buys it, that that's what they do.
Yep.
But then I like records a lot, and you can find sometimes you can find the ones I like on vinyl that are probably running away now that we're coming to the end of that era of people knowing who they are, is the Stephen Wright's first one.
Yep.
I Have a Pony. That you can still find some places, and then you can find emos. I
Yep.
have both of those on vinyl, yeah. And if you see those, swap them up, because kids now are getting smart to what's actually funny.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how that comes around.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
with
like the,
records, I like the idea that maybe someday, 20 years from now, I think record stores will exist for a long time because of the physical nature of the medium. But I like the
well,
idea 20 years from now, some kid's just going to be flipping through a bin of records, and he'll find my record, and it probably won't even be opened. It'll be one of those or whatever.
yeah,
And he'll put it on and be like, hey, that was pretty good.
yeah,
And I'll be dead, but that's the goal. Yeah.
yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, with everybody coming back to this old stuff. I'm doing a joke right now about how people are into retro stuff. Like you have the retro video games and vinyl records and antique cars and old school. You see the old school popcorn maker shit like that. The point of the joke is there's some things that I have no nostalgia for, and then it goes off the rails. But it's true. People are really into the old school shit. The The record players,
Yeah.
the vinyls are coming back. The retro, the 8-bit video game thing, type games are coming back, and yeah, people I think are yearning for a simpler time. And
Yeah, I think I like to see it because there was a time when we thought like there'd be no more malls,
mhm.
and we definitely thought there'd be no more record stores and no more drive-in movie theaters. But I mean, just humans need that stuff. And I have a friend who owns a record store in New York, and he tells me the kids come in all the time, and he'll ask them, "Do you have a record player?" And many of them don't. They just want the thing. Just like
Yeah,
you want a T-shirt that says like Texas Chainsaw Massacre on it or whatever, that kid wants like a Taylor Swift record, and she might not have a record player, but she wants that record. That's how I started, and I don't know if it ever goes much further than that. But there is some sort of human desire for a physical connection to things because now that we live in a world where like anybody can be a fan of anything and have access to all the art, what differentiates you is the physical object. I'm the guy wearing the T-shirt of the band.
hmm,
It's the same thinking, and that will never go away.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
yeah, press. Yeah. Anyway, are you going to do a sketch? Do you have any plans to do sketch or anything besides stand up or improv, or do you have any interest in that?
We have talked about writing some sketches. With Jacques comes from the television world and sketch comedy world. Um, we have I don't know if you ever met Justin George. He's a friend of ours.
I don't think
He's
so.
he has some sketch ideas. Dennis Hurley, he's an
Yeah,
actor and
I've
stand up
never
comedian.
met Dennis, but I've always wanted to meet him or do shows with him. I don't think he does a lot of shows, does he?
I don't think he does a ton of shows, but he's
Yeah,
incredible. He's one of my
yeah.
favorite people. We had him on the
I'd love to
podcast
meet
a
him.
while back.
Yeah, I'd love to meet
Um,
him.
yeah, he's one of my favorite people. I'll hit him up every once in a while just to see how he's doing. He's such a good dude. I can make that connection for you. He's so good. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
we've talked about doing it.
um, the thing with that stuff is like, I know this. Like, you can talk about doing it forever, and if you have an expectation for it being good, you're dumb. You should
Hmm.
merely just have an interest in the process and take
Yep.
it for what it is. Just like the stand up, where it's because I have a friend, not to pick on my friend TJ, but he's always been talking about writing science fiction short stories. For 20 years, he reads them all, he reads the old shit. He's well versed in the genre, but he's never sat down and done it. And like we said earlier, where you're like, it's the drive. A person who he's always like, he'll drink 5 beers and be like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to write something. That person may never do it. It's the
Yep.
person that occasionally just fucks up and writes short stories that doesn't show them to anybody for years that eventually does it.
Yep.
Because they're the one that's actually has the desire and the lack of fear of failure involved that you need to do it to keep doing it. And if you think that it's going to be some sort of like awesome thing at first, you're just going to be scared to do it for the rest of your life. So
That's kind of how I
maybe
look at
tell yourselves we're going to create something and not show it to anybody, just so
yeah.
that fear is gone. Because I can tell you, as a person for doing it 13 years, I've never written a sketch. I've done improv twice. I've never written a screenplay. I've never written a spec script. I've never done like a monologue late writing packet. And man, if I'd have done at least one of those things once, I might be a little bit more ahead in this game than I am now.
Hmm.
So yeah, now is the time to try these things and have people be like, this sucks. And then you'd be like, all right, well, I still like doing it, so fuck you.
Yeah. For me that's what it is. I I just want to have fun with whatever we do.
Hmm.
This podcast is fun. Um, some people love it, some people hate it. Whatever, I'm sure it's just fun. It's fun to do. Stand up, comedies. Certain comedies not for everybody. Some people love what we do. Some people don't. Some people kind of think it's whatever. It's fun for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, what you're saying, it makes a lot of sense. I'm down for doing a sketch show, or doing some sketches or whatever, just for fun. I think what it comes down to for us is there's a lot of time being put into this podcast as well as the stand-up portion of it,
Yeah.
which are obviously going hand in hand. And then I have a 5-year-old. He's got 2 kids of his own. So we can't. There's very little time. There's very little opportunity to have to ignore them more than we
No,
already
yeah.
do. So maybe down the road when they're a little older, maybe that'll be something that we can focus a little more on. But
yeah, that's the other thing with podcasts is we're now realizing unless you have a fuck around podcast, your stand up is going to be horrible.
mm-hmm.
unless your podcast is just you and your friends getting high and laughing about dumb shit. And you're having to do like research on your guests and having to read books and stuff, your stand-up's not going to be, it's going to suffer. When it comes to this, you only have so much energy and you put them into one thing or the other. And that's probably why I don't do a podcast. And if I did one, it would be much more like Studs Terkel style, where comedy is just a side. It would be something completely different because like that energy that I would need to put into this in order to not make it embarrassing would take so much away from the very small amount of output I already put out already. So
yeah. I mean that's pretty much just like normally when Anthony's around, it's Anthony takes us off the rails and I bring us back in. And it's kind of a good balance. It's like a yin and yang, It's a
you definitely need that. You need a Larry and a Belky. Yeah. You need a rose, a foil, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep, you do. Yeah. Who was that in All in the Family? Who was the natural or like just the steady ship of that show? Was it his wife?
It'd probably be Edith. Yeah. I mean, Edith was the one trying to keep peace between Gloria and Meathead and Archie. I would say I'd say probably Edith. Yeah,
I would agree. Yeah, because Meathead was his own kind of radical. They were both. Yeah, they were. Yeah, Norman Lear.
That's it.
Norman Lear.
You got it.
Yeah. I'm not a. I'm sure Jacques is. But like, I don't know if you ever watch like fucking old shit like Duck Soup and. Like the real old shit.
I will occasionally.
I'll
watch some like Andy Griffith. I like some old Don Knotts movies and stuff like that. But I'm not in any.
Are you learning?
I would be
anything
embarrassed to start talking
those?
to Jacques about any of that shit.
Well, they're older. They come from a different generation. Like that was
Jacques like 100, dude. He's
right, but like when he was a kid, it was like, oh, Duck Soup's on. I'm gonna be a kid and watch this. And when you were a kid, it was like, oh, Ren and Stimpy or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not our fault. Yeah.
I don't know what Duck Soup is.
It's like a Marx Brothers movie. But like that whole idea that you can just absorb and like, I don't know that that's true. Especially at this level. Once you start doing it, like I don't think you can watch Richard Pryor and just be like, all right, now I'm better. like you thought you could when you did do comedy.
That's a good question. So I used to ask this question a lot and I kept getting told I don't watch comedy. Do you still watch comedy to this day? Or I'm assuming at some point you watched comedy and that got you into it. But do you still watch stand-up comedy?
Or
what, do you find it like I don't want to watch it because it's going to influence
So most comedians say they don't watch it?
We've got that a lot.
Yeah.
I stopped asking the question because I had so many people saying I don't watch it because I don't want to be influenced.
I don't know if I don't want to be influenced is the correct. I don't know if that's so spot on for maybe why people don't watch it, even though they say that. I think it's they're scared their ideas are not that original, and or also the competitive nature of this game makes it so you don't. It's all flipped. It's like you're watching the Yankees and you play for the Red Sox. It's not you're a baseball fan enjoying a game.
Yeah.
That's gone. I mean, unless you're seeing Jim Gaffigan or someone, because unless you're seeing Shane Gillis or someone who you're like, oh, much respect, or like someone you feel is above you in the game, I think that it's just kind of like this the whole time. Right, well, all right, asshole. What's this guy got, So, if anything, what I like are older comedies. I love anything Albert Brooks ever did. So if I do anything, it's in direct response to that whole idea of the competitive nature of comedy. and thinking that these people are my rivals. And then saying to myself, well, Mel Brooks is a god and I haven't seen It's a Mad, 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 Mad World.
Yeah.
That's my thinking comedically. Those are what I go to, you know.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but I love, like, if you like Emo Phillips, you know, it's much more subtle, but I think Albert Brooks, many people would say, was the first absurdist.
I'll have to watch it. I've never.
Oh, dude, go down a YouTube rabbit hole of Albert Brooks and then watch his movies.
I'm gonna do that tonight.
You don't have to do it tonight, but just like in terms of, if you're a person who likes writing, the writing part of it and not the performance part of it, then I think he's a mentor to have, you know. And then it's also in the same vein of Mel Brooks too, you know. So those guys. Yep. That's where I would go.
I do listen to comedy and watch it more. I find it harder to laugh now than I used to because I'm constantly searching for the punchline before they say it.
Yeah.
Which I think it's a detriment. Because I can't enjoy it the same way I used to.
Yeah.
But I do that to try to better my own writing and see, you know, what am I missing in what I do?
What are you laughing at? Because what you're laughing at is what turns you on.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a good way to watch comedy now too, to ask yourself, what do I find funny? Because it's okay to not think everything those people say is funny. You look for the things you find funny because that's what's going to keep you doing it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I find that gets much more obtuse and obscure as I go on. Certain things are just like what other people think are funny. You just don't think are funny anymore, you know?
Yeah. It's funny. I was never a big Kill Tony fan. And then when they had Shane Gillis and Adam Ray on there as Trump and Biden, did you see that?
No, I don't watch Kill Tony. But
so I never used to. But that is probably 2.5 hours of the funniest shit I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I started listening after that. I always thought, you know, I'm not a big Tony Hinchcliffe fan. I liked his special where he talked about the going to buy a headlight at AutoZone, and the guy selling him the headlight had a eye patch on. He's like, "You're not going to believe this, but I too have a headlight out." I thought that was fantastic, but I always thought he was kind of cunty in all the clips I saw from Kill Tony. But that got me into it, and I've been listening. And I gotta say, the stuff that Tony Hinchcliffe finds funny, like some of these guys, I'm just like, I don't see the appeal.
Yeah,
I don't.
Well, anytime you get a platform and you have millions of eyes on you, people are going to start formulating opinions, especially in this day and age.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's the differentiating factor now, I think, and. It's weird when you don't agree with the people you respect, but it also makes you realize that you have your own unique perspective on the world as well, you know, and it's important. But yeah, I think most comics would say the things most people find funny, they no longer find funny.
Yeah. For me, I don't know if it is that. But there's also some things where I don't laugh at, where I'm like, "That's funny." I can see the clever in that.
Yeah, I've gone through whole comedy shows like that, and I wonder how many people in the audience are like that for me. Where you're like, "Okay, well, that guy looked like he was having a good time."
I say that to Anthony all the time. I do because I as when we do shows together, I won't watch him because I know his stupid ass jokes. I know them word for word. I'm not watching him, but I will watch the people. And I will see sometimes people laughing silently.
Not everybody's they'll get real close. Yeah.
Yeah. And
sometimes he'll walk. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, what were you saying? Sometimes he'll what?
I was going to say, sometimes he'll walk off and be like, "Oh my God, nobody laughed." And I'll have to tell him, like, "Yeah, no, I was watching the crowd. People were laughing. They're just not loud laughers."
Yeah.
They're just
your
they're
demeanor
there for themselves, and that's okay. It's fine. It doesn't have to be an eruptuous laughter for people to enjoy themselves. You know, sometimes people just don't.
Yeah, tone matters.
Mm-hmm.
The tone of the room matters. I think. Like,
yeah,
if you have a certain tone about you, people are kind of like you look. I remember that night. Was it Juan on that show?
No, that was the first time. No, I
Oh,
don't want to say the
I
first.
remember
That was the
Juan
one
came
in
out. Just
January.
Juan had so much energy, and like
Yep.
people can. It doesn't always work. Sometimes people are annoyed by it, but like they latch onto that and feed on that energy. And I
Hmm.
think if it works at that level, we must say that it works at the more reserved level as well.
Hmm.
If you're more reserved, then it is going to be much more like ha 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 ha. You know,
Yeah.
like that's why I say to myself, or maybe early on, and maybe it's a crutch. If you come out a little rascally, it helps. You
Hmm.
know, whereas if you're just relying on the words itself and not selling it, like this other person seems to really be selling it, relationally, they're not going to have the same whatever, even though they do think it's funny. You know.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's okay too. That's fine. Because I've had a lot of shows where I didn't think it went that well, and then people are like, "That was really good. I really enjoyed that." you know,
We had. Do you know Al Goniker?
I think I worked with him once. Is he Mainer?
Is he what?
He's from Maine, right?
He is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We talked to him a few months back, and this sticks in my head when I think about people not laughing out loud. He was telling me a story about he was doing this show where every time he did a punchline, he would see this guy almost look like he was asleep. He'd be like this. He'd be like, and then he'd look forward and then listen to the next joke, and then he'd be just like, almost like he was whatever. After the show, the guy came up to him and said, "Hey, I really loved your shit. It was great." And he goes, "Yeah, you looked like you were sleeping through the whole thing. I assume you loved it." And he goes, "No, no. Every time a comic tells a joke, I close my eyes and I retell it in my head and I take in the entire joke." And I was like, "Wow,
Wow.
that's fucking
Who
weird."
is this guy?
Yeah, he's got
Awesome.
babies and pigs in his basement, but it's some people like that.
Yeah, I think I'm like that, man. I've sat through some of the best comics in the world and didn't laugh the whole time, but I thought they were funny, and I thought,
Yeah,
oh, this is what I would do here. Again, you look at it with a different eye. I think also like if you're that guy who's thinking about doing it, you're also looking at it with a judgmental eye. So
yeah,
there's a lot of people in audiences like that now. I mean, you could
yeah,
probably say just because of their penises that it's 6 out of 10 males have thought about it. White males have thought about it, and they're in your audience, and they're coming from a realm of judgment because they're comparing you to Shane Gillis and Tony
yeah,
Hinchcliffe and all the other white guys I saw or whatever. Like, and like they're saying to themselves, "Well, this guy's not that," or "I could do that," and then they're up there doing a comedy in 2 weeks. But like, that's what I don't like about comedy is like there's that guy or it's the lady who works at the bank that only goes to comedy once, and that's your audience.
yeah,
you know, it's just like
yeah.
what
If you're
that
not in like a comedy club, you
yeah
might if you're in like a brewery, you're probably somebody who was there for lunch the week before and was like, "Oh, that sounds like fun. Let's get a babysitter." You know?
yeah yeah. That's the other thing most comedians slowly realize over time. It's like I've been doing comedy in Boston almost a decade. I never get recognized on the street. Because the people who like it are
Do
other comedians.
do you despise that, or I mean, do you wish that you got recognized? Or are you happy that
No,
you can just?
no, I don't like any of that shit. I've made a concerted effort not to want to be a known person, but
It's funny. I
but that tells me that this is just a thing to them that they did once,
yeah,
and they're gonna go one time. Most people, and then if you do go more than one time to see comedy, you're probably gonna do an open mic. That's kind of how
yeah,
it works. So it's
yeah.
fucking weird how it is. So you just kind of want to do as well as you can with that person who is only going to go see it once in their life.
I'm going to tell you the story because Anthony's not here to make fun of me. Uh, so most of the shows that I've done have been in Nashua, Manchester area. I have some outliers, but I shop at the Nashua Market Basket, and I'm I'm in there one day and I see, and you go to like to a Market Basket or a shop, whatever, grocery store. You go down the aisles and it's always the same people in your way. You know what I mean? It's like you always see the same people, and I saw this same guy constantly just staring at me. And in my head, I was like, he must have been at one of the shows. And
isn't that weird where your ego takes your brain?
yep.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there like whatever, picking through tomatoes or asparagus or something. And he comes up and he goes, "Wayne?" I was like, "Oh yes, sir. What can I do? What can I do for you?" And he goes, "Oh, I work at," I'm not gonna say the shop, but I'm an outside sales guy. He works at a shop that's way down south, and I met him like one time because I deal with other people there. He goes, "Yeah, I work at this machine shop down here." I'm like, "You're like an hour and a half away from here. What are you doing?" So he didn't know me from comedy, but he knew me from my regular job. But in my head, I was like, "Yep, I was so funny." He remembered me for that 10 minutes.
Yeah, your brain goes there every time.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It does. Again, I think that is ego, and this
100%.
thing is ego is like when it comes to comedy, it's a balloon that's constantly inflating or deflating, and you have to control it as best you can, because over time it will drive you cuckoo if you think about it too much. And I have that, and I think that is kind of just a symptom of wanting to control that, and someday someone will recognize you for comedy, and all it will do is creep you out.
It's funny you said that. So I went to Strange Brew, and I honestly, I hope this person is listening because I don't know his name, but I went to Strange Brew a couple weeks ago, and some guy looked at me. I was standing at the bar. He looked at me. He goes, "Wayne?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I watch your podcast." I was like, "Oh, cool, thanks." And as I mentioned before, I'm like not a very I talk to the people I know, but I'm like very not comfortable in that sense. So I was like, "Oh, cool, thanks." Like, "Man, nice to meet you." And I disappeared, and I've been thinking about it ever since. That that guy was just trying to say hi and be nice, and I just disappeared. I'm an asshole.
That's
weird.
You become very self-conscious about the things you say to people. I think that you're not the only one in that situation, And I've always said this, like, I do so much better when I do my set and leave and don't hang out and talk to people afterwards, because then they just kind of slowly realize that it's an act. and they find themselves being the ones sort of like walking away, and it would be nice just to do it and then to not have to like live in the world with it, But that being said, do you think that guy still listens to the podcast?
It was just last week, so
he's probably he's going to tune in at least one more time.
I mean, the one with Justin, so I wasn't on last week. The one with Justin is probably the one that he tuned into. And I think we were one listen shy of our normal, so it's probably that guy.
Well,
no, I don't know. Maybe it didn't come off as bad as I thought.
I always lose fans. Those people who are like, oh, then they talk to me, like they never, like it's the people who you just go in, you do what you need to do, and you get the fuck out of there. Like Emo Phillips, you get right in the limousine and you go.
Yep. Yeah, no, I hope we didn't lose him. It's funny because when normally it's Anthony that gets recognized. I never get recognized. I'm just a normal balding white guy. Nobody realizes it's me, or they do, and they're like, "I don't like you. I only like Anthony." So Anthony gets recognized a lot. I don't. And the one time I got recognized, I pussed out and got really nervous about it.
Yeah.
It's all right though.
But
if you're listening, I'm sorry.
I've gotten you get recognized sometimes, but it's not positive. That will happen. They'll be like, "I saw you."
I haven't had that yet.
Oh, that'll happen. Yeah, you get them both.
Yeah. What I have had? I did a show and I was standing next to another comic, and somebody came up to that comic and said, "Oh my God, I thought you were the best. You were so good." And then looked at me and said, "Yeah, you were okay." And then walked away. I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. That's
All right.
happened. I've been in that setting before too. I've gotten "you're weird"
You're weird.
before. Like I'll be in the bathroom afterwards, and people will be like, "Why didn't you do this?" Like it's yeah. The more you put yourself out there, the more people are going to say something about it. I think that is something we're all just now slowly realizing that if you
Yeah.
want to create content all day long, every day, or be a person with a voice, people will say something about you,
Yeah.
whether you like it or not. Yeah. I don't like that world. And that's probably what keeps me from like moving out of here and trying giving it a real go somewhere is I do not have any interest in being popular.
Hmm.
I don't want to be popular. Yeah. I've never been interested in it. Yeah.
I'm right there with you. This is I don't want to sound cliche, but it's almost like a therapy for me. I just when you go up on stage, it's just like those are some moments in my life where nothing matters but me. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Nothing matters to me but how I'm doing with
Yeah.
these people.
How could ego not enter into this game?
Yeah.
Given its structure.
Yeah.
It's fucking, yeah. It's, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, did you
Yeah.
have any other questions for me, sir?
I could sit here and talk to you for hours, but I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Well,
Would
you
love
have
to
a
have you on
child,
again,
so-
maybe with Anthony at some point. But
No,
yeah, it's getting pretty late, so I don't want to take too much of your time. Is there anything? Do you have anything coming up? This will come out on Monday. Do you have anything coming up that we can try to
Come
plug
to
for you?
my-
Try to get some asses and seats.
Come to my recording at the Rockwell Theater. It's free for comedians. I think you just got to enter in a code. It's on my Facebook. I'm not sure what. Let me find it. But it's free for comics. So if you're not doing anything, it's going to be a theater show and it's going to be recorded. And again, Janet McNamara and Rob Green are going to join me, and should be a pretty good time, I think.
Yeah,
And,
that's a good
and then
good crowd.
After that, I'm leaving town for a bit, so it'll be kind of like not a goodbye, but kind of like hey, I'll be back later.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's at the Rockwell Theater. It's in Somerville. It's on September 20th. We're just gonna do one show, like 7 to 8:30. So, I think it's like free comic or something.
Yeah, if you want to send it to me, I can toss it in the notes too, and I'll
Yeah.
also post it on Facebook too.
Yeah, it's Friday. It's totally fucking free. Might as well. So
Nice. Yeah, definitely go to that. I truly appreciate you taking the time to come hang out. You're always welcome. You have an open door. And then
Anytime.
you have a show tomorrow night too, right? I saw that.
yeah,
I wish
tomorrow I'm in Maynard, Mass.
Maynard, yeah.
Maynard, Mass. That's Friday. Doing an Amy T show. I've never been there.
Have you worked with Amy
and
T
then-
before?
I've done shows with her like at the Comedy Studio, but I've never done a show she's produced or anything. So, but I
Oh, yeah.
assume they're fun shows. She seems like a really cool person.
She's incredible. We just went to watch
Yeah.
her in the Chunkies in Manchester, and it's
Yeah.
absolutely insane how good she is.
Yeah?
She's incredible.
Cool. I don't think she's going to be there that night, but yeah, I'm sure she puts on fun shows and probably brings in some fun folks. So, and then Saturday I'm at the Rockwell doing Oh God No, which is kids that do sketches, and then they have stand up there too. So it's going to be a packed weekend of doing comedy. I wish I had better jokes.
Don't we all? Well, Casey, it's been awesome. I really do appreciate your time, and
No
we
problem,
look
man.
forward to seeing you in the future. Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, rate, whatever other shit is out there. I don't even know. Anthony doesn't usually let me say this stuff. He just, boom, we're done. So I'm going to say it. Do all that shit. There's been a worthy step of the quest for laughs. Thank you guys very much. Have a great night.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Casey.